Hello, and welcome to the debate between Western civilization and Eastern civilization. First off, we will start with Eastern civilization on why Eastern law is worse than Western law.
So, how do the Middle East's laws stack up against the West's? How bad really are things there? Let's find out. For this speech, I specifically looked at Saudi Arabia. I reviewed their constitution and legal system, Sharia. Why are they so bad? Well, for starters, their government isn't a democratic one, but is instead a monarchy. You know, that old thing that we found doesn't work all too well in the 1700s? Yeah, it's one of those. Another thing is that some fundamental freedoms, such as freedom of any and all speech, no matter how radical, dumb, or just plain wrong, freedom to adhere to any religion, even if that is no religion at all, and the freedom of the press to state truths, whether they be for or against the current government, simply don't exist. In comparison, these are all basic fundamental things in the West, which I feel we take for granted here. Religion, specifically Islam, is so entrenched into the Saudis' constitution that a lot of their legal and governmental systems come from it, and the Quran directly. For example, the government gets all of its power from the Quran, as stated in Article 7. Education must instill the Islamic faith into children, as stated in Article 13, and the job of the military is first and foremost to protect Islam, as stated in Article 34. This is all of the Saudi constitution. Now, I feel that it's doubtless that you've not heard of Sharia law by now, but just in case you've been living under a rock for the past few months, let's quickly define it. The Oxford Dictionary defines it as Islamic canonical law based on the teachings of the Quran and the traditions of the Prophet, prescribing both religious and secular duties, sometimes retributive penalties for lawbreaking. There. So now that you're up to speed, let's go into what it's all about, keeping in mind that this is where their entire criminal law code comes from. One thing which you may have heard about is Sharia's liberal use of the death penalty. For example, you can be killed for doing things like abandoning religion, specifically Islam, criticizing Islam or the Quran, criticizing Muhammad, and criticizing or denying their god, Allah. They also employ rather barbaric practices as punishment, such as lashings for premarital sex, stonings for murderers, cutting off your right hand for theft, and throwing gay people off of rooftops. Sharia also encourages some mean things to women. For example, in marriage, Muslims can only marry other Muslims. Marital rape is legal. In fact, there aren't any laws against rape at all. A Muslim man can be married to up to 4 women at a time, and a Muslim can marry anyone over the age of 9 years old. Also, a woman can't divorce a man without his approval. And in court, a woman's word is worth half that of a man's. As well as women can't speak to a man if she's alone, if she's not with her husband or a direct family member. Now, at this point you might be thinking, well, that doesn't sound that bad. And to that I have to say, you're a moron. There are some things which genuinely aren't, but not the bulk, or really anything which I've talked about in this speech. If you still think that the West is an oppressive, racist, sexist, capitalist patriarchy, then I really don't know what to say to you, as only one of those things is true. Now, does anybody have any questions?
Do you really think it's unfair that somebody who murders somebody should be killed?
No, I really do not.
So you think that the death penalty is, in some cases, justifiable?
No, I don't. That's exactly what I said I was against. The death penalty is stupid. Let that rot in a cell for his entire life, instead of just ending it for him.
No, I don't have any more questions.
All right, thank you for your time.
Corruption. Injustice. Where does this all take place? The United States of America. Many people believe that in the United States courts, justice is administered, but the truth is that the court system is very flawed. Judges like to hand out punishments, not justice. They hand out the punishments to oppress the racial minority and impoverished people. In countries like the United Kingdom, prosecution is not able to pursue more aggressive charges if the suspect will not plead guilty and wants to go to trial. In America, that happens all the time. In American courts, it is a bad idea to plead innocence because the charges will just be made worse. So most of the time, people will plead guilty and accept a smaller charge, even if they are innocent, instead of risking losing at trial and receiving a worse punishment. In the United States, African Americans are 6 times and Latinos are 3 times more likely to be charged than white people. It's not very fair. Police target certain people despite equal drug usage rates between race. Black people are 4 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana use. Also, Punishments are not given out equally to sentence black convicts to 20% more jail time than white people who committed the exact same crime. Do you know why the United States has the world's highest incarceration rate?
Why?
Many people would say, well, higher crime rates, but that's not the case. In fact, America is quite low on the international crime statistics per population. The real reason is corruption. Prisons have turned from state-run institutions to private enterprises. And how do those private enterprises maximize profits? By filling the prisons. Also, there is not gender equality. In a divorce, the mother is twice as likely to win custody over the children as the father, even though she may not be more capable of raising a child. Does anyone have any questions?
So you say that black people get incarcerated more and for longer for the exact same crime. Now, you say that it's the same. Also, you say that police go after black people more than they do white people. But is that just because there is more crime in black neighborhoods than there are in white neighborhoods?
I would not agree that there's more crime in black neighborhoods than white neighborhoods. Just that perhaps it's better concealed in white neighborhoods. The cops look less there.
I would just like to remind everyone that we are keeping this debate PC and we're not using bad words. Now, without further ado, Klee may now present for the Middle East.
As you can clearly see by the evidence presented, the Middle East has serious problems with their law system that must be corrected. Our associates have supplied us with a series of articles that further describe these issues. To start with, the laws in the Middle East are closely tied to their religion. Many of their religious beliefs are represented in their laws, and it is clear that their laws are in compliance with these religious ideals. Some of these can cause big issues with their society because their extreme devotion to their religion can cause them to be willing to do unpleasant things that would not normally be allowed otherwise. This is very detrimental because it causes them to be alright with doing things that are not considered acceptable in most of the world. Secondly, they torture and kill people for doing things that are not worthy of such extreme punishment. For example, you could be killed for criticizing Islam or having a religion other than Islam. You could also be brutally punished for disobeying other laws, including whipping and stoning. These punishments are rightly considered unorthodox in most cultures, and should be corrected in the Middle East. Thirdly, the Middle East has laws and social expectations that suggest that they consider women to be lesser. For example, a man can be married to multiple women at the same time, and a woman can be married very young, virtually children. Also, a woman's word is half that of a man's in court, and there are few laws against rape. So, Myron, all of these shows that the Middle East has serious corrections that they need to make with their law system. The West is clearly superior, and our representatives are sure that the West will win this debate.
Questions?
Yes. Interestingly, you focused a lot on how it's tied to religion. Well, many Western countries are very tied to Christianity. What do you say about that, buddy?
Here, I'll take this one. Christianity in the past has been far nicer than Islam is today. You could say that the Crusades were a bad thing that the Christians did, and yes, that was a bad thing, but they were not unprovoked by the Muslims.
Why do you say that? The Crusades were all about taking Jerusalem, which was the Muslims' holy land.
Yes, taking it from the Muslims who took it from the
I'm
Christians.
stopping you right here. This is getting off of topic. Just
I mean, it is.
no. We're talking about the Crusades now. This is completely off of topic. Zach, your turn.
Today, I will be focusing on Western law in the UK, while my partner will be focusing on Western law in North America. We will both be basically focusing on the same thing, but there are many differences between the two regions. I would argue that our legal system is by far nowhere close to a perfect system. In fact, I would argue it is one of the worst, even though no legal system in the world is perfect. For example, women are far more likely to win custody over their children when the couple is getting divorced. The same goes for property, money, and a ton of other previously shared things between the couple. Basically, what I'm trying to get at here is that the legal system in the Western world is very flawed and relies on one opinion to rule a verdict that may just be biased. This results in a verdict that may be unfair, and in some instances, the accused person or persons may not be guilty, but are ruled guilty based on one opinion. Now back to the law in the UK. To understand law in the UK, you must know that in the UK, there is no single legal system. Instead, there are multiple legal systems that apply to multiple regions, which are England and Wales, which rule under the English law, Northern Ireland, which rules with the Northern Ireland law. These systems are a law based on common law principles. Finally, Scotland, which rules with Scots law. Scots law is based off of civil law principles, with some common law elements dating back to the High Middle Ages. In conclusion, I do in no way think Western law is a perfect system. It is good in some cases, but overall, in my opinion, it is a biased system and it is mostly one-sided.
So, Zach, are you saying that sexism is worse than murder?
How can you support your statements to make them more accurate?
Well, my predecessor beside me, Mr. Peyton Newlett, has informed me that sexism is not a #1 issue here in the Western world. In fact, murder happens at least 1 in 10 days out of the week.
What are your sources?
The internet, Mr. Peyton Newlett.
What sites on the internet did both of you use?
The internet isn't exactly the most credible source.
We use multiple sources that we cannot remember offhand, but we will eventually be able to write down on a piece of paper, because we did write them down on sources as a separate piece of paper.
So what you're saying is that you plagiarized the entire thing, or you just made it up?
No, in fact, we rewrote the questions and the statements so that it would not be plagiarized.
So did you write them down on a piece of paper, or have you yet to write them down on a piece of paper?
We wrote them down on a virtual piece of paper.
Well, then you should be able to see them as you did your speech, which is also written on a virtual piece of paper.
So then you haven't actually written them down on a piece of paper.
No, we wrote them down on a virtual piece of paper.
So a laptop.
No, a virtual piece of paper.
So what exactly are they?
Does anybody have any other questions?
This question is for Peyton and Zach. Which law is more democratic?
I do believe that Western law is more democratic. I do also believe that Eastern law does have many democratic features. It's just not as democratic. We can't specify any major democratic features in the legal system.
Aren't you, by saying that yours is more democratic, proving that yours is better than the Eastern law?
Yeah, but people, they're stupid. They're gonna vote for let's just think about the 2016 presidential election, all right? The fact that people could narrow it down to Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton out of the whole of the United States. Do you really think democracy is the answer? Come on, that's kind of...
I would like to remind you that we're not using mental illnesses as insults for people. And also, I'd also like to remind you that you literally just admitted, you said yes, that Eastern law is worse than Western law.
No, I didn't.
No.
Yes, you said yes as soon as I asked you that question. You said yes, but. You started off with yes, but.
Yeah.
No, you said yes. Okay, that's it. I'm done. Now I have some questions for all four of you. Why do you think religion plays such an integral part in the Western and Eastern law? You may both answer this.
Religion plays a key part in law systems because in the past, religion was what we had as values. Religion provides us with a set of core values. The West has Christianity's core values, and the East has Islam's core values. Now, these values are very, very different. Christian values are basically just be a good person, whereas Islam's values are very, very different. Peyton?
Well, I don't really think it's a good thing that religion is so important to law. I feel like you shouldn't need to believe in a higher power to be a good person. What do you think about that, Dylan?
Well, you don't anymore, but in the past, in the history, when these law systems were created, they were created on the basis of the religion that was prevalent in the region at the time.
Just one quick thing for Dylan. You said that Christianity's values were all about being a good Christian, and Muslims' values were very, very different. Could you specify?
Well, Muslims' values are quite different. They have things like battle strategy built into their equivalent to the 7 deadly sins. Things like don't retreat from battle. How is this relevant to being a good person? Also, non-Muslims can't really follow this and be a good person, whereas anyone can follow Christianity's values, and it'll just make them a slightly better person. You don't necessarily have to be Christian, but you can follow the values.
Well, I mean, who doesn't like some good old battle strategy, right? And, you know, not retreating from battle is bravery, so I guess it's more of don't be a coward.
Islam's basis is all about preserving Islam and building Islam up to basically take over the world and be an empire, a massive empire. Whereas Christian values are built on being a good individual person.
Okay, next question. This will be for both parties. How do you think law has transformed over the past 1,000 years?
For the West, it's gotten better. For the Middle East, it's gotten worse.
Can you specify?
The West has gotten better because there's less racism and there's more willingness to change. And in the Middle East, there's more violence and war.
More violence and war. But what is the real war? The war against individualism.
Next question. This is again for both parties. Which law base has a greater impact on each respective society?
I believe that the West has a larger impact, as America is a Western country, and it is the world's greatest superpower. You can't really go anywhere in the world, besides maybe North Korea, and be away from American influence. And because of that, the West.
This is for both parties. How do you think discrimination plays into your judicial system?
Well, judges are racist, sexist, and do not support the minorities. What say you?
The Middle East is quite sexist at heart. Things like how the courts only value a woman's word, half that of a man's, is just proof of this. Also, people prefer hearing a man's word over a woman's most of the time just in society there, which is sexist. It's inherently sexist and is incompatible with the West.
This is for both parties. How, if any, do you think the monarchy has affected your law system?
In Saudi Arabia, which is the country that I looked at, it is a monarchy, and no one is elected. There are no elected officials. You could argue that here in Canada, we are a constitutional monarchy, and we are still a monarchy, but really, we're not. Yes, the Prime Minister gets appointed, but the Prime Minister also gets elected by the people. They get chosen by the people. And that's a great thing. That is something that doesn't happen in Saudi Arabia. That is something that doesn't happen in Middle Eastern countries.
And this is our last question. This one goes out to, do you think law will continue to evolve? If so, how? This one is for the Western.
I feel that law will continue to evolve as it has for the past however many thousands of years. Law has always been a very integral part of civilization.
This concludes the 2016 Super Awesome Fun Fest debate. Join us next week when we debate over kittens. Cute or cuter? See you next week. Bye.
Definitely cuter.
And also,
Bye-bye now. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
one more thing I'd like to add is that soy products are not as good for you as nutritionists would have you believe. Thank you.